Well, first of all, thank you, EMU, for having me here again. It's a pleasure, it's an honor to be here, to be back here. There's a lot of memories, nostalgia flashing back into my mind. As Raz mentioned, I graduated, I was here in 2000, I came here in 1998. I studied computer science, graduated that in 2002, and then I did my MBA here as well. I used to do my exams in the JLA classes right here. I hated those days. It's a love-hate relationship, really. And then a couple of years later, I got my master's degree. So I was here for about 6.5, almost 7 years. Yes, I did learn some Turkish. I'm not going to speak in Turkish today because I'm better in English. So, you know, those who struggle in understanding some English, please put the headsets on. Maybe that would be helpful. But I won't speak too fast, just so everybody can, you know, keep track. So, I work at a media agency. We've kind of changed our model into a marketing performance agency. It's too complicated to get into, but basically what we do is we focus on the business objectives of the brands that we represent, and we put the right media mix, the right creative mix, to get the best results out of that. So we focus on the bottom line. We try to sell products as opposed to just pushing out ads. So our job is not just to find a place to put an ad in. Our job is to actually sell the product of the client, and we find the best way to do that. It was great that Enis was talking a lot about the relationships between agencies just before the session, because as a creative agency and the way we work together, is crucial to the business. But the model is changing now. It's a bit evolving. So OMD was traditionally a media agency where basically the creative agency gives us the ad. Well, they get briefed by a client, they create an ad, they do 1 million revisions, and they get told the budget is $30 and they have to create something for $1 million worth of an ad. Anyway, so they finish all of that, which we're happy we're not a part of. And then they give us the ad, and then we find the best place and time to put this ad on TV, on outdoor, on newspapers, on digital, on social, everywhere you see these ads. So one of the gentlemen there was talking about ads overload. It's our fault. You can throw tomatoes at them. But it's becoming a lot more scientific now. We're choosing the right audiences in the right place and the right time. There's a short video that I'd like to show you about what OMD is about. So if you can just dim the lights, please. Anyone? Lights? Sound? Light, sound?
It's less human. But maybe that is the one thing that is making us more human. We are always in motion. A restless crowd in search of connections. No, not those connections. The ones that immerse your senses with short instances of joy and emotions. Every second, every instant matters. The world keeps changing. It is ever evolving, and so are we. At OMD, we don't simply respond to change, we rise with it. Through connections, through stories that humanize experiences. A culture that thrives on talent, the kind that wants to make a difference. The kind that is curious about human progress. A pulse that beats in transcending our boundaries. An agility to respond in real time, to create personal stories that people share. Through data, we link you to the crowd. This is the insight. We use vision to drive our thinking and enhance your success. This is the idea. An experience worth sharing with the world. This is the result. It is time to evolve. Always think, always ask, always do. With OMD.
Okay, so as you can imagine, there's a lot of analytics, a lot of graphs, a lot of numbers and data that we crunch every day. So it's not a job for everyone. Some people might get very bored, but there's a creative element to it as well, especially when you work in the social media field and the creative field that is merged together. OMD is an American company. It's based in New York. It has offices all over the world, and it's part of the Omnicom Media Group, which Enis talked about as well. Publicis, the example he gave, is our competitor, so we don't like them. Now, about social media, this is some of the team. I manage a team of about 40 social experts that are scattered between basically Dubai and Beirut. And we provide a whole range of services, from community management, which is the people who are responding to your queries, to social listening, which is us going out and seeing what people are talking about, to creative development. We actually have a creative arm that sits on the other side of the floor. We work closely with them. To experiential activations, it's the stuff that happen on the ground where we promote the brands with certain activations. Paid media is when we push the ads live with money. And influencer management, which is making a huge splash these days. Everybody's using influencers, and I can't believe nobody's mentioned it so far in the past 2 days. I don't know why. And obviously building strategies around all of that. This is some of the brands that we manage. Now, we, as an OMD agency, we manage a lot of brands, but these are the ones we manage on social media specifically. So the biggest of which are the PepsiCo portfolio, all of it, which is a lot of work. We have Sephora, is a very big client of ours, Nivea, BN Sports. I don't know if you're aware of BN Sports. It's an exclusive sports channel we have in the MENA region. Disney, Marvel, and Kushibashi. We manage that. That's familiar to most of you guys. McDonald's, and a few others. So it's a handful, and that's why it requires such a large team, and we work on campaigns that are either homegrown in the MENA region, or sometimes they come to us from global, and we have to adapt to the MENA region. This is a size of this gives you a taste of the size of the operation that this entails. We're talking about 68 socially active brands, 184 active platforms, 70 million fans and followers across all of these platforms, 8,000 engagements received per hour. So in the time I'm sitting here, we've had about 20,000 engagements. 150 comments moderated every single minute, 3 billion brand impressions every month, and lots of awards. So the team that we have, with the aid of a lot of tools that we use as well, kind of manage all of that and the size of this operation. But all of this responsibility falls on me. So, you know, maybe you don't want to be in my place, maybe you do. It pays good money, though. Salaries are better than what you show. So if you want to come and work in Dubai, but you need to know English. Okay, so the primary markets that we service are the UAE. So for us, there's multiple offices everywhere. But for us, the primary markets we service are the UAE and Saudi Arabia. The UAE and Saudi Arabia are actually some of the biggest markets in the world per capita, when you talk about per capita consumption. One fun fact about Saudi Arabia is that they have the highest YouTube consumption in the world per capita. So an average Saudi citizen watches more YouTube video than anyone else in the world. They're just insane about YouTube. They watch so much of it, and probably the reason why they have nothing else to do. They have no cinemas in Saudi Arabia. They have very limited outing chances, but it gives us a great opportunity to reach them on these mediums. The challenge is how. How do we reach them? How do we talk to them in a way that resonates? UAE is a very different market. It's smaller, but there's a lot of purchasing power in it, so brands love it. People spend a lot of money. But it's also very diverse. So in Saudi Arabia, the vast majority of the people there are actual citizens, Saudi citizens. Whereas in the UAE, it's a melting pot of cultures and nationalities, and that presents its own set of challenges as well. You know, my colleagues yesterday were showing examples of some of the Cypriot ads that they had on radio, on TV, and whatnot. And you know, it's a bit easier when you know the culture, when you live in it, and when you have one homogeneous kind of set of people, versus having, you know, 20, 30, 50 different cultures. And you have to speak to them very different languages in very different ways, because everybody's got a way to be reached. So it's a very challenging you know, task for us to custom make these messages depending on the audiences that we're trying to reach. Now, this is what Saudi Arabia looks like in the media. In reality, this is what Saudi Arabia looks like. So it's not much different. If you go there, you'll find a lot of this. Women were just allowed to drive there like literally 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. So yeah, it's crazy, and no comment beyond that. But Dubai, as I said, is very different. This is the Dubai we live in. It's absolutely crazy. It's happening. There's a lot of different nationalities, I mentioned. There's a lot of different ways to reach these people, and it's an hour. It's about 2 hours away from Riyadh, but it's the capital of Saudi. But it's a very different scene and dynamic. Did you see that? That was 3 seconds of a 3 seconds message. Some people missed it. 3 seconds is all it takes for somebody to decide whether they want to see your ad or not. Who said it was 5? You said it was 5? I see you were 5 and I raised you 3. Okay, it's actually Facebook and Instagram. Sorry? Yeah. No, 5 or 3 is still a very short time. 5 seconds is a YouTube version. Facebook and Instagram says 3 seconds. And Facebook calculates a view right after 3 seconds, which kind of makes us question, is this really a view? Because it just passed so quickly. You barely had the chance to see the messages in the video. So should I really count on the views to say, hey, I've got 1 million views, but how many of these views are actually complete views, or 50% of the video, 60%? How many people of the people who saw the video actually got the message that you're trying to get across? So food for thought, and we'll come back to that later. So how do we communicate with people? How do we talk to these different sets of audiences that is very fragmented, very segmented, and how do we make sure we reach them in the most relevant manner in a way that within those 3 or 5 seconds we capture their attentions and we don't lose them? Well, first we listen. We hear what they're saying. We hear what their preferences are. We look at what they're doing and where. This is very big for us because it's what tells the creative guys what they need to do and how. So every campaign or every brand that we work on that wants to live on social or digital, we do a number of steps first to make sure that we're reaching the right people. And not only reaching the right people, we're reaching them the right message. So we want to make sure that whatever we're telling them is something that they're actually interested in, and to be as relevant as possible to them. The other one is we research. Who are the people we're talking to? Where are they? What are they doing? Where are they consuming content on? Are they on Instagram and not Facebook? Are they on blogs? Are they on LinkedIn? Are they on Pinterest? And so on. So there's a lot of variables here. We need to find out what these people are doing, how they're doing it, when are they doing it, when is the best time I can reach them, what kind of content are they most interested in, what kind of content are they viewing. All of that is very, very important data points for us to look into. And it's easier when you have a place like Saudi, it's kind of majority it's Saudis, but in UAE is a very different thing because each one of these cultures has its own different set of variables. The other ones, and after that we start segmenting. So we look at these audiences, we create audience profiles. So we say, this group of people consume this type of content in this place predominantly, and this is what they like, and this is what they dislike. And then this group of people does this, this, and that. And then we craft the messages depending on, is it right? Yes. We craft the messages depending on who we're talking to. And it may sound simple because the slides are making it look simple, but in reality, there's a lot of work that goes in the background. There's a lot of data crunching. There's a lot of looking into softwares and Excel sheets and graphs. Not all graphs are ready. Not all of these applications give you this data readily. Some of it you have to crunch it yourself. You have to make correlations and find out what is the best way to reach these people. Now here's something, after crafting the message, that helps us optimize how the message works. It's kind of a matrix that we've developed that looks into the quality of the content. Basically, it determines the quality of the content because it's always a contentious point. It's always a point that everybody debated on. Is the content good? Is it bad? I don't know. The creative agency says, hey, our content is good. The media agency did a horrible job at targeting people. It's not our fault, it's your fault. The media agency comes and tells the creative guys, hey, you did a bad job at creating this ad. It's your job. It's your fault. It's not our fault. We ticked all the right boxes. So it's always a point of friction between us and the creative folk, and we kind of created something that will help alleviate that. Now, this disclaimer here, it's not exact science, but it works to a large degree. Now, let me take you through it. It takes a number of variables here. So this is AER, or average engagement rate. The way we calculate average engagement rate is like we look at the interactions, comments, likes, shares, clicks, views, and we divide them by the number of people reached. So how many people did we reach with our content? We take that, and we take the number of people who interacted with it, and we get that number. Or it could be, in the case of a video, a view completion rate. Now remember when I mentioned the 3 seconds about Facebook, and I said, does that really count as the message received? Well, we don't look at the 3 seconds. We don't look at the number of views altogether. We report it to the clients because the clients love to hear about it, but in reality, what we focus more on is completion rates. We look at the video, we see where the message is seeded in, and sometimes we have a say in that, and we come in and say, we need to seed the message at, for example, the first 10 seconds of the video. Why? Because we know that this audience consumes content, mostly they start dropping after the 10th or 15th second. So make sure that your main message in the video is at the 10th or before the 10th second. So this gives us a higher probability of people seeing the content that we have and seeing the message that we're trying to get across. And that's why we look at video completion rate versus actual video views. The other axis here is about sentiment, which is a good way of us to know the reaction of people to the content that we're pushing out. Now, sentiment can be viewed in different ways. So a like could be a like. Basically, I like this piece of content, but very mildly, so I'm not going to comment on it, I'm not going to share it. I'm just like, okay, this is cool. There's reactions on Facebook, so the frowny face and the smiley face and all of that. That's also a reaction, that's also a form of a sentiment. There is people commenting as well and saying, this ad sucks, I hate you guys, go to hell, or, which we get a lot of. Or the other way around, basically, this is amazing, I love this product, I love you guys, whatever, we get a lot of those too. And that's sentiment. Now, it's important to note that this doesn't work if you're pushing content organically. Why? Because if you're pushing content organically, which is you're not putting paid media behind it, very few people are seeing it, and the data statistically would not be viable. So we wouldn't have enough data to be able to determine how good your the content was. So what we do is, when we take these into consideration, we plot where the content is, and based on that, if it, for example, has high interactions and high positive sentiment, then it's a decent piece of content. If it has high interactions and negative, then it's a controversial piece of content, it's a problematic piece of content, maybe you want to stay away from it, or maybe you do it. It depends on the brand. Some brands like to live on the edge. If it's low interactions and high, positive sentiment, then maybe you're not talking to the right people, or maybe you're not pushing it through the right target audience. So your targeting may be off there. So tweak it a little bit, target the right audience, and probably you get a lot better results, and you can transform this into that. And if it's low on all sides, then you just did a crap job. Your content is bad, your targeting is bad, it just doesn't work. So this gives us a kind of an indication of how good the content is and where does it sit on this, on this matrix. And based on that, and that's why we call it optimization. We go back to the creative agency, we go back to the brands and the clients, and we tell them, hey, this is how your content performed, this is the data, what the data tells us, and here's what we think we should do next time. Now, speaking of influencers, we also collaborate. So influencers have proven, even though I don't like them a lot, some of them are divas, and I hate divas, but they're proven to be actually a very good asset in getting the message across. They have high affinity with their followers. Some of them have millions of followers. We look into influencers in multiple levels depending on how many followers they have, but also not only the followers, also the quality of engagements they get. So they could have 1 million followers, but their engagements are very low or mostly bots. The followers may be bots, which is fake accounts. So obviously we dismiss those. But in the mix, if you put it in the mix, it's actually a very powerful tool to get your message across. And then we target our content depending on these segments and depending on the influencers. We choose the right influencers that talk the right message and that resonate with the brand and so on. and then we monitor results. So here's another graph I wanted to show you because Razia told me that we needed to be a little more technical. so I added this graph last night. So what we have, let me break this down for you. Okay, so we have 46 plus 7 is 53 posts that we pushed out on Facebook. Okay, so we did this analysis and we looked at the number of engagements and versus the number of people reached. 46 of these 53 pieces of content were not promoted. So we're talking about organic and paid here, remember that? And 7 of them were promoted. 87% of engagements received on these pieces of content were received on these 7 posts. I mean, there's nothing that tells you the importance of paid reach and the disadvantage of organic reach as much as this graph. Take any example you want, any brand you want. This is just one of our brands. And do this exercise on it, and you'll find the exact same results every time, I guarantee it. Unless your content is crap. That, it's up to you. So it just tells you the importance that whoever comes to you, maybe later you work in agencies or you're doing marketing campaigns, you say, hey, I don't have a lot of money, I just want to push this piece of content and the rest organically. You're wasting these guys' time. Because they're working their asses off, creating fantastic content, hopefully, and then you push it and very, very few people see it and it's just a waste. So instead, put a lot of money into the creative, put some money into the ads, and make sure as many people as possible see your content, because that's the aim, right? That's the point. You're on social media for people to see your content. So that's about monitoring and optimizing. But we don't only look at, obviously, paid versus organic. We look at sentiment, we look at interactions, we look at people, what they're saying. We break down the interactions by segments, males, females, where they're talking from, and so on, and all of that tells us. Sometimes we see that a certain message does not resonate with females in a certain country, but it resonates with females in another country, so we stop serving the ad to that country and we push it to this country. All of that can be found through looking at the data after we actually launch the campaigns and we get some information from it. And this is a graph showing the watch time. It's actually from one of our campaigns. It's a from last Mother's Day that happened a few months ago. And the ad is long. I didn't like it. The brand came to us and they said, hey, we have to push this. I hate this ad, but I didn't have a choice. We didn't have a choice. We had to push it. And you can see, this is on Facebook, around the 3rd second, which is basically the automatic, where Facebook tells you there's automatic views, everything drops and just plateaus into almost nothing. So the content is long, the content is not interesting, and this is a very simple example that tells you where, even though we made a recommendation to the client before we launched the content that this is not going to work, this came about, so we took that and we went back to the client and told you, see, we told you it's not going to work, and it didn't work because it's long, it's crap, and it just doesn't work. And even though you had 182,000 views on one piece of content, which is not so bad, the target audience is small, you think it's good, but when you look at this, you find out no, it's not. Actually, very, very few people barely completed the video. So food for thought there again. So here's some examples. I want to take you through some examples of campaigns that we've done. Now, we work closely with some of the creative agencies that represent our clients, but we also have a creative shop in-house at OMD. We have a creative director, and he has a team, large team that we work closely with and we design campaigns with. And the advantage that we have maybe over some of the creative agencies is that we take all of these insights. We have so much data to work with because we run those media campaigns. We have so much data, we take those insights and we feed them into the creative team so they can make the content as good as possible. So the first case is about Lipton iced tea. Lipton iced tea, let me just take you through the story of the brand. Now, some people, we did, the client came to us and they said that the sales are down. We're not getting our targets and we need to do something about it. So we did a bit of research and we found out that people's perception to Lipton iced tea is that it's tea gone cold. So they think if you take any glass of tea and you leave it out for half an hour, whatever it tastes like, that's Lipton iced tea, which couldn't be further from the truth. If any of you tasted Lipton iced tea, you'll know it's not exactly that. So the brand had a major problem with perception when it comes to people. And then we dug deeper into that and we thought, okay, there's something about the culture that we have, this is in Saudi, by the way. There's something about the Saudi culture is that they judge things too quickly. So they look at the name, they look at the appearance, they look at something, they say, this must be like that, and just move along, and they dismiss it completely. So that's a human insight that we got out of the data that we have, and out of the research that we have, and we decided to turn that onto itself and create a campaign. Now, main slogan is "Give it a chance," or "A'ti Farsa" in Arabic. We created a series of videos. So we partnered up with some mini celebrities, YouTube kind of celebrities, and we created pieces of content of different scenarios where we found people judge others the most, or judge situations the most. So we created that in a comical kind of way, and we talked about how people judge each other or different situations very quickly, and it turns out it's not the case. And seeded the message for the brand itself to basically give it a chance, because it's not what you think it is. Now, it's important to note from a business result, I'll show you one of the videos right after this, but not the entire video because it's about 5 minutes long. But the sales actually grew by 21% as a result of this campaign. And there was a 76% lift in ad recall. The frequency of consumption grew per week. So from a business perspective, which is what I started the presentation with when I said we look into that as our primary target and objective. From a business perspective, the campaign was a huge success because there's a huge uplift in product consumption because of the campaign. I'm going to show you a video. I'm going to show you about the first minute or so of the video. It's a bit long, but you'll get the idea of the type of execution that we were going through. It's translated, so don't worry.
البنات الخليجيات سفيرات أهلهم لين يتزوجون. ممكن تحصلين على الشهادة والسيرة والسيارة، ومع ذلك صادوج.
مجهزة جنطة المسرح بعد.
يما قلت لك عندي بروفا.
وأنا قلت لك إن جاسم وأهله جايين يسيرون علينا.
صرت مرة شكبري يشعر لي، وأمي للحين تتلني من أذاني.
Okay, so they later find out that they have a lot in common. Obviously, this is somebody who's coming in and trying to ask for the girl's hand in marriage. And because once she gave him a chance, she found out that there's a lot in common that they have, and it turned out to click, basically. And that's the gist of the video. But as you can see, it's a little funny. But we did actually find out that it was a bit too long. So that's one of the data points that we got out of it. 5 minutes turned out to be a bit too long, and we wished we had truncated further, but we took that learning into future campaigns. Yesterday, Turkcell blew the stage with their emoji campaign. And Pepsi has done something similar. I've actually had these slides ready on there before, so they kind of stole our thunder. But last year was, I guess, emoji year for everyone, or the past 2 years. Emojis consumption has exploded. As the lady from Turkcell mentioned, one of the smileys was the top, texted character in the world. So Pepsi jumped on that as well, and they created their own emojis. So because the standard emojis that you use, there's actually licenses for them. So brands can't take them and adopt them as theirs. They have to pay royalties. So what Pepsi did instead is they created their own set of emojis altogether, and they put them on their cans. Now, unlike Turkcell, Pepsi has cans that they can sell, and their main campaign was "Say it with Pepsi." So they want to, each can communicates something, and they want to tell people, use the cans to communicate your message, or use the emojis on the cans to communicate the message. And we did some executions around that. So not every piece of content needs to be long. Not every piece of content needs to tell a huge story. Some of it needs to be snackable, funny, interesting, short, quick, gets a message across, and that's all you need to do. And in fact, recently, this is the more prevalent form of content, because as the gentleman there pointed out, people don't have time, they're losing patience, the 3 to 5 second rule, so people have very little time, so you need to create this type of content to capture their attention really quick, get the message across really quick, and then move along. So about 90% of the content we create today is like this. It's just short. These are 6-second bumpers, as we call them. And 90% of the content we create is like this, in the form of short videos or cinemagraphs or GIFs or GIFs. I say GIFs, don't shoot me. Another thing we've done, we went into merchandising. Sorry, let's keep replaying. We went into merchandising as well. So the ball there was sweaters, there was t-shirts, there was a lot of stuff. But also, we did something funny here. So Pepsi and Lay's are sponsors of the Champions League. Football lovers? Football lovers? Yeah, everybody's football lovers. We love football. So you know, we were talking about telling the story using the emojis. So we started talking about what happened in last night's match using emojis. And we asked people to crack it. So if you didn't watch the match, or even if you did, how accurate do you think this representation of the happenings of the match was? And the comments were insane. There's so many people. Some of them were funny because they just took, made fun of the whole thing and interpreted it in a funny way. But some of them were spot on and just created a scenario based on the emojis, which is exactly what our objective was. We want to say it with emojis, or say it with Pepsi's emojis, and people did that. And hello. Okay. And people did just that, and they started interpreting the emojis as a story. Now, here's another example of moment marketing, what we call moment marketing. So, as I mentioned, Saudi Arabia, women were just allowed to drive about a couple of weeks ago. So, Sephora created this piece of content to kind of talk about that. So, being relevant, being very active, very quickly on the spot, based on things and trends that are happening at the moment, is very crucial for us as well. And we pick up on those. We actually have listening queries, so social listening queries that are active all the time, picking up on spikes of certain mentions. And when a certain mention spikes, we get a message, so we can do something about it real quick, and we create something like that. The next example is not from a client, Ford, Middle East, but I love the creative so much that I included it here. So some of you might have seen it in some publications, but it's a very creative way of welcoming women to the driving seat by a car brand. But disclaimer, Ford is not a client. Nissan is. This is another example of a brand that came to us. Pickup is a biscuit with chocolate inside. Sometimes you get very challenging brands. We have disinfectants as a client, so how do you communicate that on social? But they wanted, they have a very small market share. They're a German company, and they wanted to come in and create a big bang because they just launched in the Middle East. So we were like, okay, so it's going to be very difficult for us to take equity away from the big brands. There's a Snickers, there's a Kit Kats, there's a Galaxies, there's all these big brands out there. And for us to come in and step on their turf and say, hey, look at me too, I'm as big, just as big, or just as important, nobody will, it's going to take so much investment. These brands have been paying millions and millions of dollars over so many years to build that equity. So we decided, okay, how about we use that equity to our advantage? But not only that, we wanted to communicate the brand's values, because the brand's values were all about being upbeat and outgoing and driven to do things and living at the moment and so on. And we thought that some of the big brands are not about that. So we decided to do a little bit of guerrilla marketing here. So the left one, as you can tell, it's a Kit Kat, kind of play on thing. And Kit Kat is always slogan is take a break, take a Kit Kat, have a Kit Kat, something like that. So we said no breaks, always in action. So we're not about taking breaks, we're about, always going and doing stuff. So we took their platform, we flipped it on upside down, and we said this is what we're about, and we're not similar to you. The right one is from Snickers. As you all know, global Snickers positioning is you're not you when you're hungry. I think you have the same ads, right? Everybody has the same ad. Yeah. So here we said never lost, always yourself. You're always yourself, irrespective of whether you're hungry or not. So we played on that as well. And we created a few more examples, but Oreo and Twix. Oreo, you have to split it and dunk it. So we said we're never split, we're always together, because pickup is all about communities and people coming together and doing things together. And Twix is about the pause, because they have these two fingers and it's a pause button, looks like that. So we said no pause, always playing, and so on. So it's just an example of us, trying to capitalize on another brand's equity, but also building up our own using that. And it got a lot of attention. In fact, the previous one, Kit Kat Arabia, commented on our post, and they're like, "Can we have our logo back, please?" and we told them once we decide not to have a break, we will. So it was a little funny banter exchange of words here between us and the brand, which is the beauty of social media, right? When it goes well. So I'm gonna wrap up with this. I don't know how good I am with time. Yeah.
5 more minutes.
Okay, I'm gonna wrap up with this. So just leave you with a few takeaways. Chinese takeaway, get it? Thank you. Thought long and hard about this now. I'm sorry if it's corny. So listen to what people are saying. It's extremely, extremely important. If you don't do that, you're screaming in a well or screaming in the darkness. You have no idea what where your message is going, who you're talking to, who's picking up on the message and using it or not. You have to listen. Be relevant, be timely. If you find something that you need to talk about, but people have passed it like a year ago and nobody cares about it anymore, you lost people's attention. These are tenets of being relevant on social media. These are important things that no matter what you do and all of the data that you crunch and all of the knowledge that you gain, you have to keep these in mind. Always go back to them, because it's important to remember these. Sometimes you get so lost in the day-to-day that you forget, is my content really relevant? You have to take a step back, look into it, and see if it's actually relevant to the people we're talking to. Equally important to all of this is the business objectives of the brand. Ultimately, we represent brands, and these guys have an objective. They need to sell a product, they need to sell a service, and what they're doing is ultimately to do that. We can't lose track of that. We need to keep that top of mind. We need to make sure that whatever we're doing feeds into their bottom line or feeds into their brand love metrics, and trying to build up the equity of the brand. That's extremely important as well. And obviously, you can't get it right from the first time. It's okay if you don't get it right from the second time, but preferably you get it kind of right in the third time, and so on. So it's okay to fail. We do A/B testing sometimes with content, so we take two versions of content, we push them out in 2 different audiences, and we see how they perform. Sometimes we flip them over, we see how they perform before we actually launch the campaign. And then based on that, based on the results, we push it out. So it's okay to test. It's okay to fail sometimes, but the important thing is to learn and to optimize. And if your clients are good enough and understanding enough, then they'll give you that chance as well, and they'll learn with you, and they'll grow with you as well. That's it. That's my talk. If you have any questions. Here.
Yeah. I must say, we are so proud of you as an EMU graduate.
Thank you.
You talked about the difference between creative agencies and global media agencies. My question is, which one is a priority for you? Corporate branding or product branding?
Look, they're equally important. Product branding is important on the short run. It can sell products today, it can sell products a week from now, a month from now, but corporate branding is what sustains the brand. One example I'd give you is Apple. Apple has, our client, by the way, has insane, unbelievable corporate branding. The Apple brand in itself is so powerful that the minute you see it, you blindly trust everything they do, irrespective of the product. And if you look at it, they do actually very little product advertising. So they are spending more now because the markets are ever so challenging. But they rely a lot on the brand's name itself. So in this instance, corporate is very, very important. And on the long run, it's proven to be a very important asset for them.
Do corporates lead you to do corporate branding or product branding, or you do decide it yourself as an agency?
No, we get briefs from the client to tell us that our brand name is suffering. Sometimes we get briefs on products, and once we do the analysis and research and the listening that we do, we find out that there's an inherent problem with the brand itself, with the corporation itself. So people don't trust the corporation. So we go back to the client and tell them, hey, you need to take a step back. It's not about your product. The product may be good, but people don't trust your brand. So we need to find a way to fix that.
You said that you cannot put everything on social media, which was quite intriguing for me as well.
You can what, sorry?
You cannot put everything on social media. You have disinfectants, you have like millions of products to display. So what is difficult about that? What happens if there's a product that you cannot promote because of the product itself?
That's the beauty of creative guys is that they never run out of ideas. They always find new ways to communicate things. The problem with such products like disinfectants, in the immediate future you can always come up with something interesting. It's sustaining it. So we've had DAC and a few other cleaning disinfectants that needed to be on social, and we're like, okay, how many people are going to see this message and how are we going to look at it and stuff? So we needed to find a way. And initially we were promoting the products, but then we ran out of ideas to do it. You pour something into a toilet, it makes it clean, voila, you're done. So we had to find innovative ways to do it. So and one form of that is playing around with the content types. So we moved away from static into the cinemagraphs and the GIFs that we were talking about and stuff like that. And we started animating some of these actions and making them a little more interesting in doing it. But we've also created some programs as well with people who represent our target audience, mini-series and mini-films that are not necessarily about the product, but the product is embedded in there, and we find ways to promote it like that.
My last question, in most of the markets, user-generated content is quite popular. Is it the same in the Middle East?
Yeah, it's very popular. It's the quality, I would argue, isn't as good as some other markets. In some markets like Egypt, UGC is fantastic. These guys are super funny, and they create really, really cool stuff, and they spend time on it. But other places, not so much. But still, yes, we rely on it a lot. We have a lot of campaigns that encourage user-generated content, but we found also that people are quite lazy in general. They don't want to do elaborate things. They don't want to take a lot of time to do things. So they don't spend a lot of time on it. One example I can give you is Paul. It's a French restaurant. We wanted to encourage people to create user-generated content so they can promote some of their dishes, right?
In Dubai?
In Dubai. It's in the Middle East, actually. So we thought that, we took the insight of people taking pictures of their food. Everybody takes pictures of their, sexy food and stuff like that. So we thought we want to add another element to it. So created placemats, the mats that you put the plate on. The placemats were of certain destinations like Paris and Milan and stuff like that. And when you put the dish on it, it looks like you're actually having dinner there when you take it, when you see it from a certain angle. So we encourage people to take more pictures of that and use a certain hashtag, and whoever won a competition would go into a cooking school in Paris. So it got us thousands, literally thousands of entries.
Thank you. Any questions? Ooh, questions.
Thank you for the very beautiful presentation. I'm looking forward to a society, now it seems like we keep re-emphasizing emojis now and emoticons. But I also see that it has moved out of that. It has now moved to Bitmojis, where people can personalize themselves. Can we see something new, maybe like on a Pepsi can, I can send to you a Bitmoji of myself, and then I get it in a few days. I think it's a way of, an indirect way of advertising these brands from a user perspective. Yeah. On one hand, because some time ago I saw some, I think it was Coca-Cola or something. If you send your name to them, they get you a can of Coca-Cola with your name on it or your nickname, and then you snap, you share your social media platforms and all. Yeah. Again, I think many of these advertising agencies, sorry to say, are not doing enough audience research. And that's why you would produce something and you discover a commercial and you discover that sufficient number, or large number of people don't like the commercial. First of all, why should you produce what they don't like? Okay. So that's on one hand. Again, I think there is this problem of misuse of social media. Many people or many commercials or many agencies don't still get the direct link with social media. We just feel because it's a free platform, then we're using it. Finally, I think there's this problem with advertising agencies that I have noticed with media organizations. How come or why is it that you owe media organizations a lot? You don't pay their money. That's 3 questions for you there.
Okay, I'm sensing a lot of hatred towards the agencies. So maybe don't pursue that career if you don't like it so much and be a critic instead. Okay.
That's what it's hitting into actually.
A lot of questions. Look, I don't know which ads you're referring to that people don't like. A lot of ads work really well most of the time. They do serve the bottom line, and that's why brands do them. That's why they invest a lot of money in them. Investing money in ads is not only in filming the ad, but also pushing it out on TV, buying premium spots when there's programs and stuff like that, and these do bring results. Now, in the social and digital space, this is a hit and miss because it's so difficult to grab people's attention, and there's so, like I said, it's so diverse. So you need to be very specific, and you can't make every piece of content hit the mark with that. But at the same time, you can find innovative ways of doing it, like like integrating your product into content. So there's something called native advertising. You can read some things about it. It works a lot. But also creating, so you're there on social media to consume content, right? You want to be entertained. You want to see stuff that is funny. You want to look at videos about mobile phones, whatever it is. So if you integrate the product within that realm, then I've caught your attention anyway. And that's a new way of people, of us, representing the brands on places like digital and social without people getting bored and seeing traditional ads. The first question about Pepsi and all of that, look, the production, I won't get into the details of how difficult it is to produce cans, getting a design, approving it, getting it mapped into a bottle or a can and moving into production lines and producing it in mass. It's a very complicated process and a very long process. It's not that easy. And usually these brands like Coke, they do it either generic names and they print a lot of it, or if it's customized, they do it on a stunt basis. So they do a short period of time, a few weeks, very small market, create a video about it and present it to the world, tell them, hey, look what we're doing is cool. So you can't sustain something like that. But I think if you look at it another way, VR is becoming massive now, virtual reality. The new phones have capabilities to embed virtual reality in everything. So these brands have a huge opportunity now to have virtual reality embedded on the can or product itself, and you can project whatever image you want of yourself or anybody else, take that image or video and snap it and send it to your friend and so on and boast about it. And that's another way of doing it without necessarily having to go through the complications of producing the actual cans.
Thank you. Can we take one last question?
You mentioned that people nowadays, they prefer to consume short, snackable pieces of content.
Yeah.
Does that also apply to written content? Does that translate well into that medium?
Yes, to a certain extent, but it depends on how compelling the story is. So if you create a story compelling enough, whether written form or video form, people will watch it. One example I can give is Humans in New York. I don't know how many of you know this account. Just look it up on Facebook if you don't. It tells the stories of ordinary humans in New York, or now it's expanded globally. And the stories are quite long. There's a lot of reading to do, and it's just a picture, beautiful picture. And people read it. The view rates and the engagement rates are phenomenal. And it just tells you that if you tell a really powerful story, a human story, then people will read and people will follow. And people will watch your video or read your content no matter how long it is. The problem is it's difficult to do that en masse. It's difficult to do that on a continuous basis. So you can do that every now and then, but on an ongoing basis it's difficult. And we have a challenge that we need to keep brands on top of mind. I can't create a human emotional story every day to keep brands top of mind. I need to create snackable small content to do that. Every now and then we create something more, you know.
So it's about finding a balance.
Yeah.
Okay. And the other part about pickup.
Yeah.
You were creating these ads that were parodical or ironic in a sense. Did you face any form of like copyright infringement in that regard?
I had the same question.
Yeah.
We actually checked with lawyers before the campaign went live. We did our due diligence. So we consulted with some lawyers before the campaign went live and they gave us the green light. The first creative for the campaign was a bit more aggressive than that. So we had to tone it down a little bit. We even had to change some curves of some of the, some of those, icons so it doesn't seem like it's a copy. So we checked with legal, they gave us the okay, and based on that we launched.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd like to remind you, when we come back, we will be having a draw by Turkish Airlines. Whoever uses the hashtags that is shown on the screen now, in a minute, I guess.
I'm sorry.
We will enter a draw, and Turkish Airlines is giving 5 tickets to Turkey and a ticket to Europe. So please use the hashtags to promote the event. Khaled, thank you very much for accepting our invitation to be here.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks a lot. Let's give a memory from your university. After how many years?
12.
12 years. Thank you.
Thank you.